So welcome to ShrinkSync. Sorry, we're starting up with some technical difficulties here. I'm very excited about today's presenter, Dr. Bruce Gale. Before I introduce him, I just wanted to share a little bit about ShrinkSync, and then we'll move into introducing him, and then he'll share his expertise with us. So ShrinkSync is a free app for therapists. It's basically a digital networking hub where you can grow your practice through the client referrals and find therapists who may fit the bill for people you are searching for finding a therapist. And we also have many CEU events posted in our CEU event section. So if you're part of an association or putting on an event yourself, please feel free to put those on there. We have our list of treatment centers on there, so it'll be easy for you to find residential programs and treatment centers for your clients. And of course, our community section where we have a lot of our discussions on either clinical issues or introductions of yourselves. Now I would like to introduce our presenter for today. I'm going to go through his bio because he's got so much that he's done. Dr. Bruce Gale received his undergraduate degree from UCLA and master's PhD in clinical psychology from Florida State University. He completed his internship and advanced training at Boston Children's Hospital while a fellow at Harvard Medical School Department of Psychiatry. Dr. Gale is former chief psychologist of the Division of Inpatient Psychiatry at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and previously taught abnormal psychology at American Jewish University. Presently, he functions as an independent educational evaluator conducting psychoeducational and functional behavioral assessments for approximately 50 school districts in the Southern California area. He's also the developer and director of Lunch Groups, a trans-diagnostic, empirically supported social skills treatment program serving approximately 80 families for students and adults with internalizing and externalizing challenges. Through his company, Behavior Tech Solutions, Dr. Gale presents locally and nationally on methods, including technology integration, involving assessment and treatment with students and parents. He is the developer of Rapid Screener, an interactive social emotional behavior assessment tool that allows multiple raters to report on student functioning. Dr. Gale is chair for Division 6 on Media Technology and Communication of the California Psychological Association. I am very happy to introduce Dr. Bruce Gale.
So everybody take a quick sip of coffee because that was a long introduction. It was a wonderful introduction. And it's so funny, very few things embarrass me these days. That's one of them. When I hear about myself, I always think to myself, I'd really like to meet this guy. And it never sounds like me, but all those things are true. And what I've done is I've really tried to make a gentle introduction into the idea of using forms and why you would use forms. I think people think of forms as just being something, you know, that either you sign up for a sweepstake or you put in your email address and you wind up with junk mail that you didn't want, or that you use it as a contact form on your website. And for example, Rapid Screener, the tool that was mentioned, I first developed that back in 2002 using a website called FormSite. And we've enhanced it considerably. We actually did a fairly major study and produced a self-report version. But it all runs on a survey. It's a very sophisticated survey. It's a survey that has something called JavaScript, which is a programming language. You don't need any of that for what I'm going to show you today. But there's no glass ceiling here. You can actually create surveys that become very interactive. You can create the equivalent of your own apps. And so this is what I'm going to introduce you to. So having said that, let me see how this little system works here.
Because arrow down right now.
So arrow down? Okay. No, that didn't do it. Do I want to be in presentation mode?
Oh, where do you want to go?
I just want to go to the next slide.
That's it. It's on there.
Oh, it's on. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So it turns out it does work. I was sharing with Anita that I have this very mild fear of using other people's technologies, even to the point that when I was presenting recently in Stockton with an organization called PENT, and we work with 250 school districts, and actually. FormSite to the rescue again. I have a very sophisticated program that's a behavior scoring tool that I created using forms again, but it emails people and it creates reliability checks and all kinds of things. Well, point is, I brought my own projector just because I get worried that, what if a bulb goes out? So anyway, so notice here, we're going to go through the basics of online forms. And an online form, just to be clear, is one that has an internet connection. Interestingly, the latest version of web development, and don't worry, I'm not going to get too technical, but it's something called HTML5. And that actually has the ability that when you're on a website, it can store your information if you lose the connection. But because it's so new, programmers have not yet figured out how to make use of this. But you just watch, you're going to be seeing over the next year more software coming out that makes use of this really cool feature. And we're going to talk today, however, about not only forms, but how you can collect your information and how you analyze it. And I'm going to show you a couple of demos of things that I've done recently, just to give you an idea of what's possible. We're going to go over some advanced features. We're going to talk about what to do with your data once you've collected it. And I plan for there to be an opportunity for Q&A as well. So this is just a sampling of some of the technology that I use in my practice. And really, as Anita was saying, my practice is composed of doing assessments. I'll be in Antelope Valley tomorrow morning at 7:30, for example, doing what's called an IEE assessment. And we have our lunch groups program, and I have behavior tech where we actually don't do as much as I'd like. We do I get calls for some technology integration. Interestingly, I tend to do things outside of California. So because of technology, I don't have to travel there. I can just teleconference. But recently, after trying several different canned databases and electronic health records, I decided to create my own and wound up doing so. So we now have a fully HIPAA compliant customized database that is designed for my practice. That's just an example. We create forms that are HIPAA compliant, and the way that we do that is we de-identify them. So if you remove the client information and you remove any ability to identify that client, you can publish it on the front page of the New York Times. It is now considered de-identified data. And there's some regs that you can look up that help you with that. So I found that to be the most cost-effective way to create forms that meet HIPAA compliance for protected health information. We all use all kinds of spreadsheets, and not just rows and columns, but we make use of things called data tables. I'm going to show you an example of that. We have a video storage subscription, and I can actually see which people are watching which videos. And in our lunch groups program, for example, when parents are watching tutorials that I've created, I know whether or not they watch the entire tutorial. I presented previously on doing quality assurance measures and outcome measures for your practice. I think that Yelp is not the way that I want to have my own practice rated. I don't think they are knowledgeable or sensitive about what I consider to be effective treatment or assessment. So I've designed tools for my own practice to help look at that. And the rule is you have to be willing to report the good and the bad. And overall, we have what I would call a semi-paperless office. So here's just a very quick overview. And the only reason I'm showing this to you, you can always get this stuff off any of my websites or by typing my name in, but I just want you to get an idea of what's possible. Because if you look on the left-hand side, okay, yes, I'm an APA, what am I, approved sponsoring organization, and I will give courses. And Rapid Screener, created through forms. Lunch Points, where parents can award a child a certificate based on a specific behavior that they've identified back in our social skills program, also based on a form. The BPOS, which I'm taking a trademark out on, is based on published research that I've done with other individuals, And it's a behavior scoring tool. Again, all done through forms. And if you look at lunch groups, as we're currently getting ready for our summer program, families fill out introductory information that helps us figure out, are they going to be a good match for our program? And then we go through our pre-group assessment, which also makes use of Rapid Screener. It's a very efficient process. I'm going to be finishing up 3 assessments later today. I just began those assessments on Monday, and the reports will go out by tomorrow. So forms can really help you organize your data and be very efficient. So an online form is basically an interface. That's what I'd like you to take away from this. It's just a way of collecting information, and when you see forms, or if you create a form and you decide to put in first and last name in the same field, that's not necessarily the best idea, because if you now want to say, Dear Dr. Smith, you can't really do it so easily because it's going to say, Dear Dr. Bill Smith, since you put first and last name in there. There are ways around that, but why complicate things? So most forms that you see online, they hold text. So if you see the number 5 is stored as text, not as a number. And the reason that matters is when you go to transfer the information to a spreadsheet or to a database, it's going to think the number 5 is really, say, for example, the letter E or the letter A, and you have to tell the program, and there are ways to do that through formatting, you have to tell the program it's really a number. And you'll see that in a spreadsheet, because if you ever see a number that is aligned on the left-hand side, usually that's a good sign that it's text. And when it jumps over to the right-hand side of a column, it's now considered a number. If you didn't follow what I said, don't worry about it. I'll show a little demo later on. The more advanced programs will hold things at minimum in these 4 areas. It will store it as an actual number in addition to text. The information can be passed as what's called a variable to other fields in the form. You can make calculations based on particular numbers in the form. And you can even convert, by the way, text information into numerical information. So let's say I had a field that said never, sometimes, always, and often or something. I can create a 1 to 4 or 0 to 3 scale and then use that as part of a statistical analysis. Now, keeping in mind, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, because remember from a course you must have taken at some point in time, when you do that, those are not real numbers. Those are simply, well, they're more than categories, but I guess they're intervals, but it's not an ordinal number scale. So just kind of remember about that if you start converting some of this stuff, because is never to sometimes exactly the same as often to always, for example. That's what I mean by ordinal versus, that's what I mean by ordinal versus interval, for example. Okay, so also you can store documents. And we've started doing that in one of our databases. I added the ability to upload documents in that BPOS program with behavior plans. What happens is that a score uploads their behavior plan when they think it's in their best form, and that document is now passed to another person. And all that is done automatically. So you can use forms and think of them like a database. And what a database really is just a collection of records that hold certain information in different fields. So first name, last name, date of birth are 3 different kinds of fields. You'd call first and last name text fields, and you'd call date of birth probably a date field. So you can store it in its own form database. You can transfer it to a spreadsheet such as Google Sheets. You can download it, by the way, into Excel, or there are free spreadsheet programs. And you can store it in an external database, which is probably the most complicated thing to do. The big concern when you're using forms, excuse me, is security. You don't want the information to be made available to others in any way. And so you'll notice at the top of the screen right now, it should be, as you're on ShrinkSync, you'll see it says HTTPS. And that S you can think of as standing for secure. It actually stands for SSL, which stands for Secure Socket Layer. And what it means is that all of the information right now, as you're sitting wherever you are and I'm sitting where I am, it's all encrypted. Somebody coming along trying to see what we're doing would not be able to easily see it. Can the government get in there? Who knows? I'm not passing any information where I'm worried about that. But can a hacker get into it? Not in any way easily. And the thing to keep in mind is that you have to be taking reasonable measures. You have to follow community standards. You don't have to be the world's top technologist, but as long as you're adhering to what is considered customary and reasonable for your community, then you're safe in terms of HIPAA and safe harbor and those kinds of things. So you want to look for that S. Now there will be times that you don't see the S. Does that mean that it is insecure? The answer is maybe. Recently, I purchased a car, and when I did so, it wanted me to fill out a credit application, and there wasn't the S there, and I got a little panicked. So being me, I went into the computer code and I looked to see what was going on, and I was able to satisfy myself that it was about to take me to a link that was going to be fully secure. The average person, I realize, isn't going to do that. So the best thing is you ask. Ask the company before you fill something out, because I have seen memberships for different organizations that I belong to ask me for my credit card information or other very personal information, and without that S, it's going to be sent through what's called clear text. That means if someone did use something called a snooping program, they'd be able to read all of my credit card information just like it's here on the screen now. That's not what you want. And you can see that there is a link. I don't know if the link is going to work in your form, but you can just type it in here. This link doesn't only tell you about public Wi-Fi, but it also tells you about SSL and how to keep yourself secure. So, excuse me just a second. So okay, I do need to be able to speak. I don't know why I'm feeling so hoarse this morning. All right. In terms of what forms are used for, you can see that I've put maybe half a dozen things here. These are just suggestions. You could create a form as simply a way of collecting information for almost anything you want to do. About 5 years ago, I was involved in a federal case, State of Arkansas versus Department of Justice. And Arkansas hired me to go out and evaluate children at a state facility. I needed to interview all of their families. I had a very short amount of time. How the heck am I going to really thoroughly interview 50, 60 families and get information? And so what I did is I created a massively detailed survey about medical information and progress and injuries and restraints and all kinds of things. And then I spoke to families in a telephone follow-up. That turned out to be enormously helpful. Plus, I was able to then graph the information and present it as part of expert testimony in federal court. That proved to be very compelling. I did something very similar, as I'll show you a little bit later today, when the Board of Psychology had some regulations proposed about a month ago that was going to significantly impact psychologists. And I wound up creating a survey using FormSite and no, yes, I did use FormSite, but then I did everything else in Google Docs. And I wound up getting 1,266 psychologists. Of those, 1,000 of them fully completed it. And I reported on the data from those 1,000 individuals, and I created a website report. And you can actually get to that, and I'll show that to you later, because it just all came from a survey. And this is how you would do something like doing outcome measurement, for example, and maybe you want it to appear. It doesn't have to be fancy. And all of this is something, yes, it took me some time to do it. I had not used these tools before, but from the time that the data came in, from the time I had the website built, was honestly about 24 hours. So if you're creating a form, this is what you would do. Now, it does vary from company to company, and I've listed some companies later on that you may want to consider and play around with. But after you log in, your username and password, you might select a design. I don't even bother with it initially. I consider that one of the last things that you do. But you're going to think about your fields. You're going to add something called logic. Should it skip pages? Should things on the page appear and disappear? You can make all that happen. And then who's going to get it? Do you want to really lock it down so only those people you choose can fill it out, kind of like the way you all registered today? Or do you want to just make it publicly available, and do you want it to be searchable on the web? So those are things to think about. So here I'm going to show you a little bit about Google Drive and Google Forms, because it's either free or you can pay $5 a month per user. And by the way, they will sign a business associate agreement with you. So that makes it very compelling, because you can have HIPAA compliant forms in Google Docs. Excuse me, in Google. Google Docs is kind of generic. There's Google Sheets, there's Google Slides. So anyway, this is what Google Drive looks like. Excuse me, just kind of a hard drive in the sky. And I left on here on purpose so you can see an assessment that I did. We use these little 6-letter codes, and we find that by identifying our clients using that, that it helps my staff search for things, and at the same time, it keeps it secure. And you can see here we've got folders, so it looks just like a hard drive. Here, if you look down at number 1, you can see that it says More. And when you first click on New here, then clicking on New is going to open this up. You go to More, and when you go to More, it takes you to number 2, Google Forms. So you click on Google Forms, and let's go ahead, and we're just going to create a simple contact form, okay? You've seen these. You've on your website probably. So first of all, in order to create the contact form, and you can see that I've labeled it up here, number 1, this box here require BMG, PhD, BTS, which are my companies, to log in. No. If I left that checked, which it was checked before, that would only let my own staff be able to fill it out. That's great for internal communication, but that's not what we want. And also, do I want to show a progress bar? Sometimes. That's nice to see that you're 20% or 80% done. Be aware that the progress bars can be misleading. If your form has a lot of things on a page, the person is going to, it's based on number of pages, is my point. So if you have just 2 pages, but it's really long, it's going to tell them they're 50% done, but they still have a really long way to go. So think about when it makes sense to use that progress bar. Do you want to require people to have to log in, which is a form of increased security? That can be nice. And they can use Google Accounts, which is not the same as Google Mail. They don't scan you. They don't send you ads. It's simply a very secure way of confirming that the person to whom you send something is the person actually filling it out. And then sometimes it's nice to randomize or shuffle the question order. So down here, we're going to start off, and you can see that I have selected choose from a list. So let's see what that looks like. So I've gone ahead, and the list here is salutation. So I'm going to say either Mr., Ms., Doctor, and I could put help text in here, and it could be something like skip this if you wish, and I think I actually added that later on. And notice this is very simplistic. It's very nice. This button here is for edit. This allows you to copy, and there you can just delete it. Here I have choose from list, which is what we chose just a moment ago. Just to go back, see, choose from list, and now choose from list, and I've typed in some names. There it appears. As simple as can be. If I were to click on that, that's called a drop down. Now here, I have text because I'm going to add first name and last name. So you can see here, there it is, first name, text, and I'm going to duplicate it. See how the arrow is pointing to the word duplicate or copy? That's going to get me first name, copy it, and give me last name as well. And notice I've made these required questions. I want to know who's contacting me. So now, what are they seeking? And so I've just put in a few different things based on my practice, but also I might want to choose other, so you would click here, and you can see that other appears. So I haven't checked required question yet, but I will be checking that later. So this is what it looks like. Nothing fancy so far. One of the things that some other programs do that Google Docs or Google Forms will not do is, let's say I wanted to take last name and slide it up here next to first name. I can't do that currently. I will tell you they're always making enhancements to it, and so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a future feature. Also, notice these are radio buttons. I could have made them checkboxes, and if I did so, people could check off multiple items. But I just want them for right now to choose one service at a time, and then it's going to carry them through some logic. So we could just have it here, what do you want? Put in your email and your phone number, and we're done. But we're going to do a little more than that. We're going to make the form a little bit more customized. So now notice this little thing up here that says go to page based on answer. And that only works with multiple choice. It'll also work with drop down. I don't recall at the moment if it works with checkboxes. In other programs, there is a way to make it work with checkboxes, but I don't remember if Google Forms does. So now we have these different areas, and I want you to think of each of these as almost like the chapter of a book. And within our chapter, notice here that when we've clicked, now it says continue to next page. Well, that's not exactly what we want. We don't want someone to go through and consider all of these. We want it to dynamically move from their choice to the correct page. So notice here, if I click on the top one, it says continue to next page, go to page 1, contact form. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's because we haven't created the chapters of our book. We just have one chapter at the moment, or no logic to it. So now we're going to create chapters by using something called page break. In page break, what we're going to do is we're going to simply take each of these names and create a page with that name, and you're going to see that populate here on the right-hand side. So notice I've now created my page breaks, yes? You can see my little squid or octopus on the right-hand side. And so we have a page for individual therapy and all of these other areas. But notice something right here. It says continue to next page. That's another part of the logic that we're going to be able to very simply address. Otherwise, it'll take you to, say, group therapy, but afterwards it's going to take you to assessment, consultation, and all the others. You don't want that. So let's look and see what we have now. We've created our pages, and now when we come back and click, you can see for individual therapy, there's individual therapy, page 2. They link up. And so we go ahead and we choose each one of these with a corresponding page. Hopefully this is clear. Let's see. Oh, I just want to point out, this one that says submit form, that's going to become very important in just a moment. So you can see now that I've gone ahead, and remember, this only works when you click on go to page based on answer. And so when they chose that radio button for individual therapy, now it's going to take them to page 2 labeled individual therapy. When they go here or any of the others, it's going to take them to the respective pages. And then finally, other has its own page as well. Now remember what I said before, I hadn't made it required? You really have to make this required, otherwise the logic of this will not work. So now it's almost as though they start off in the book, and now they're going to your different chapters based on, if you will, the table of contents. Right here is the table of contents based on those choices, and here is the appropriate chapter that they're going to go to. Well, the reason I call it a chapter is because a chapter is content, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and add items under each chapter page, if you will, so that when they ask about group therapy, they're going to see entirely different information than when they say they want individual therapy or assessment. So here on my contact form, just to review, I have my salutation, first and last name. Remember, one piece of information per field. Each of these is a field. And now here's my table of contents where they choose what they want. And originally I was going to put information under each page, and then I thought, well, that's redundant. Why do I have to put the same question under 5 or 7 different pages? So I created 2 more fields. These are text fields. What's the best phone number and what's the email address? In more sophisticated programs, you can do something called validation. Excuse me a second. When you do validation, it means that if you want the phone number to show up in phone number format, then you can click phone number under validation. And if somebody types in garbage, it's going to say, I need a phone number. Here, under email, same thing. And someone can sort of fool it. If they put in xxx@yyyy.com, depending upon the sophistication of the validation program running behind this, it might accept that as an email address, it might not. Notice here, so we have paragraph text. And this is for, okay, best time to reach you. So it looks like I'm filling it out for page 2, which is individual therapy. And here you can see I've typed in a question. And now 3, I'm going to make it required. And you can see that, you can't really see it easily, but this is not text field. This is paragraph text. See right here? There it is, paragraph text. I guess you can see it. And notice here that I've changed this now. This doesn't say go to next page anymore. It says submit form, because after they've filled out this chapter, they're going to be done. I want them to go to the end of the book. And so now here for group therapy, notice that I have entirely different information. What is it, anger management for teens or adults? Is it social skills? Is it treating shyness? What kind of a group do they want? And so that's under checkboxes. They can choose more than one. I've typed in the question for current groups. And then here, notice to the left of this, you'll see the checkbox, but then you also see this little series of dots. These are sliders. So if I wanted to rearrange the order of this, I just grab one of these and pull it up to the top, and it'll move to a different position. And if I decide that I don't want it in here, over here is a little X, that's how I delete it. And then finally, you can see that I chose to use the other again. So this is the logic that is true for almost any form. They're going to become more sophisticated than, or they can be more sophisticated than what I'm showing, but let's finish this. And you can see here that if you do presentations and maybe they're going to check off some things, notice here again it's check boxes. The nice thing is you can't really make a mistake in the design process. You just delete what you don't want, or you drag it around. So you can see here under presentation, that's what it looks like once that question is finished. And then for other, you can see that I chose to use paragraph text. So now I'm actually all done with my form. And being all done with it, I have 5 options of what I can do with it. We're going to first start with number 5. The reason is that maybe we have collaborators. Maybe Anita and I were working on the form together, and I now want her to see it and be able to edit and review it. So that's where I would invite somebody else to edit it with me, and that becomes a team-based collaboration process. Here, if I choose number 4, I could just type in the name, and if that name appears in my Google contacts, it's going to automatically populate this field. Now, for my different groups, when I send out my weekly updates to families, I will have something, for example, we have something called Essential Skills Group. So it's called ESG. If I type ESG right here, it's going to populate it with the names of the 11 families who are part of that program. If I type 14-, it's going to show me several other programs, and maybe I want to send it to my 8 to 11-year-old families. So that's how you can also populate it. Plus I have a group called LG All. And if I just type that, it's going to send it to all 75 families who are coming to our programs currently. So this is how you can send it via email. Now I went into that detail, but the fact is that I rarely do it that way. And the reason I rarely do it that way is because, number one, I have no record of who actually received it and did they open it. So I use a program called Boomerang that actually tracks emails and lets me see, did people click? We're going to go all the way up to number 1. Did they click on this link? So you copy that link, you embed that link into your email, and a very easy way to do that, if you're a little frightened of this, put your own name in now under number 4 and send it to yourself. Copy the relevant information. See how this is really, really long, and it actually goes on much further, probably out to about here. You can shorten it using this. And when you shorten it, you're going to get something like GOO.GL. That's one way of shortening. As you're going to see in a moment, there are other programs that shorten that let you customize things a little more, and that'll be clear in just a moment. But the really cool thing is you can embed it right on your website. So if we choose embed number 3, let's see. Let's take a look here. So links, that's just that URL code. So going back right up here, that's just that code. That's what the link is. You just pop it in. If you use the embed code, that's a bunch of computer code that you're not going to be able to decipher. And that doesn't even matter because I'm going to show you how you make use of it and put it on any website. So here's the code. It starts off with things like iframe, and then it goes on for just a mile. Down here, you can change this. If you're doing it for a cell phone, you're probably going to want to make it 400 wide, not 760, and maybe 400, 500 high is okay, because people don't mind going up and down on a cell phone, but they're not going to want to go from side to side, or even worse, it'll just cut it off. So that's your embed code. And now here, last night, I opened a free account with Wix. It's one of those web design programs. And in Wix, you can go down to, I think it was app settings or something. You get to a certain point, and you see something called HTML settings. This, remember iframe? We had iframe in our code. There it is. iframe source, HTTP docs. There it is. iframe source, HTTP docs. And then there's all that code that you don't know. But remember the height was 500? Well, there's a 500. Could you change it right there? Yes. Should you? No. You should change it back here because you don't really know what you're doing and you might do the wrong thing. But take a look here. When I go ahead and I put this code in, and you can't see it, but right up here it says update, right behind part of this form. Look what I get. There's my form. It's that simple to embed a form onto your own website. So here's an example of a form that I sent to families just recently because this is spring break. And I didn't know whether or not there were going to be families to meet. So I created this form in Google Docs. I do wish that this is a limitation in Google Forms. I wish this could be up here. It can't. For some reason, they require you to put something here. This required refers to the fields down here, so you can see a little asterisk. So you can see some families weren't going to be able to attend. This took me 5 minutes, by the way. So for 2 of our groups, which are they going to attend? Thursday or Wednesday? And notice I just have them put in their child's first name. If you just collect first names, that's pretty much considered HIPAA compliant. Now they continue, and I have some smarts. See, if they choose 11 to 13, it takes them to that page. Yes, I can attend. No, I'm not sure. The reason I put not sure is that when you only put yes and no, you get fewer responses. You often have to put another response, even though for our purposes that meant no. Here, do they want to make any comments? And then they submit. So it takes them no time at all. I use these things all the time with my families. When do they want to have the parent drop-in meeting? When do they want to meet for a parent dinner? We're going to be going to the zoo, which is a good day. All of these different things. And you can see at the end, this is the message they get. So you can customize the message. So let's look, remember how I said that you can analyze the data? Google Forms has built-in analysis. And so you can see we didn't get a whole lot of responses. We did okay. We should have had about, between those 2 groups, we should have had 21 families responding. So we did okay. We got 15 out of the 21 between the 2 groups. And you can see here that most of the families who responded, all the families who responded for 11 to 13-year-old groups said they can't make it. And out of the 14 or 15 kids in our teen group, only half of them were going to come. So we used this data, and we canceled group for this week. And because we're lucky that April is a 5 Wednesday and Thursday month, so we just moved it to different dates. Notice here, however, I have an error. Let's just look back. So can you attend first and third Thursday versus we can attend on Wednesday? Now, I'll tell you that I would not have made this error in FormSite or other programs because I would have piped in this information. That means it would have captured the data from a previous page and popped it in right there. But I inadvertently put Wednesday instead of Thursday, and you can see that. It didn't affect anything, and here are some of the family comments, and they're glad I did the survey. Somebody changed their response, fine. And so I just deleted the change response, and someone says it states Wednesday, did you make a typo? And you can see that people either did it right away or they didn't do it. And so that's good information for knowing your population. For others, it kind of builds a little bit, but these are very simple analytics that are part of Google. And as they say, but wait, there's more. And we'll get to, in a moment, the spreadsheet side of what that looked like. But I want to switch gears now. And let me also just pause for a moment. Let's see, I don't see any questions that have come up, and that's fine. On the technology thing, sometimes people don't exactly know what they want to ask. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And so I've tried to give you very simple examples and ways of being able to practice this kind of stuff yourself. I've been using Formsite since 1998, so obviously I like it. Whether it's the right program for you, can't say. I've tried others. I've tried Wufoo, I've tried SurveyMonkey, I've tried SurveyGizmo. I've even, we received a grant for a program called Bovisi, used to be Web Surveyor. It was $15,000 a year. We had the grant for 3 years. I was able to replace that program with Formsite. And actually everything, there's only one feature that that other program had that Formsite doesn't have. Oh, if I tell you what it is, well, I'm just going to say it and then take a sip of coffee to keep yourself awake. It's called a reverse funnel. And what a reverse funnel is, it's easier to explain. If I say to you, what are your favorite ice creams? Chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry? A funnel is where you choose chocolate, and then on the next page it says, well, what do you like best about chocolate ice cream? So it's a little bit more than just passing the information forward. It takes your selection and you can put that in the form of another question. A reverse funnel would be, well, how come you didn't say vanilla or strawberry? So it takes the unchecked answers and makes those the ones that you form your question around. So we found a workaround for that and everything's just fine. And actually with Formsite, just to give you an example of the power of it, when a family starts off on our Rapid Screener program, we are notified the moment they begin it, not when they finish it, but when they begin it. And we get a little email that just says first name, last initial, has started Rapid Screener. Then we get a second message along with the de-identified data when they complete it, and that shows up in the form of a PDF file that we can just click on and look at all the results immediately. And so that's really helpful because it's a multi-rater tool, and we might have as many as 5 teachers and 2 parents filling it out all at once for just one client. Well, I'm doing maybe 7 assessments at a time, or even 10 or 12 assessments. We need to keep track of all this. So that's some of the power of how we do this kind of thing. Also, if you have a contact form and you don't want it showing up in your email, you can actually have a link to the form show up, and you have to type in a password to get to the link. That kind of information makes things much more powerful and much more secure. Just because something isn't automatically PHI doesn't mean that you don't want to protect it. So these are some of the features that I tend to use in the more sophisticated programs that would not be available currently in Google Forms. So I'll just review them. Login and return is kind of like password login. Calculations, if I want to score to see a particular number of responses, or maybe I want to create my own assessment tool and have scoring, that's what calculations are for. The rules or logic branching is what we've already done. That's where you're skipping pages based on a particular response. And for example, in one of the programs that I created, I require a key code. If you don't have that 6-digit key, it's going to kick you out of the program. So I created my own password protection, if you will. And then, and in our Lunch Points program, well, those teenagers, I got to tell you, they are so clever. We don't want them to know whether or not they've imitated their parent. So we have fruits and vegetables as the password on a drop-down list. And we tell parents and kids it's because fruits and vegetables are good for you, right? So if the parent is apricot, and that's what they use the first time they log in, they need to use apricot every time. If we see that they have not used the same consistent password, we can say to them, hey, wait, did you generate a certificate last week? Now, in the 14 years that I've been running lunch groups, we've only had that happen twice out of 800 kids. So It's not a big concern, but since teenagers and technology go together like peanut butter and jelly, we just know that we have to, just telling them that helps them not be tempted to imitate their parents and generate their own certificates. Show hide is very cool, and I'll show you an example of that, but based on the response on the same page, information is made available or is unavailable. And similarly, you can hide something based on a response. You can make it disappear. Piping is what I said, that you can pass a value forward. So if I type in my name initially, then fine. Next page, it says, "Hi, Bruce." And that level of personalization can be nice. I also personalize for gender, but that required that I write computer code. And so in our forms, it says, if someone is a male or female, it will go ahead and say, well, how did he do? And if they choose skip, then it just puts in the person's name instead. So that's a little bit of what I mean by logic. Notifications can be via email. I believe there are even other ways to send it, but we make great use of the email communication features, and we might have as many as 7 different emails on a form, and each email is customized to the way the person filled it out. So I realize that some of this sounds overwhelming. Just be aware that it's out there. And also, if you want to be charging your clients online, be aware that FormSite and many of these other programs will allow you to do your billing and even recurring billing, like subscription-based, online. So those are some of the main ones. These are the features available in FormSite, and most of these are available in the other products as well. Notice I just copied these menus. So notice here it says segment heading, and then here it says it again. That's not an error. They just did a little bit of user analysis and found that often if you're on the screen and you're going to choose formatted text, you might want to put a nice little header above it. I make use of this customized HTML all the time, and that's how you can pop in a form within a form. And you can also even pop in video tutorials on every page if you wanted. Drop downs you already know about, short answer, all of these things here would be part of Google Forms, even paragraph, even interestingly not formatted text. Google doesn't have a good ability just to write in instructions separate from the question or to make little comments appear. So I have certain surveys that when someone makes an error, I'll put a little orange or red note on there that says, "Are you sure you meant to do this?" That kind of thing. Here, notice they have even more features. You can, if you don't want someone to have your actual email address, you can have within the form a radio button here, and let's say they want someone, Dr. Mazur in my practice rather than me, they just click for Dr. Mazur and it automatically sends it to her, but they never saw her email address. If they want to choose multiple individuals, then that's what the checkbox would be for. Recently, I had to communicate with those 1,000 psychologists, and based on who had completed things, I was able to use the mass email permission, and I was able to duplicate basically what I do in Constant Contact. And having done that, I'm actually considering giving up my Constant Contact subscription and going to just using FormSite because it has email capabilities, and it's unlimited, but based on your user sign-up. Down here is if you wanted to create your own ordering system of some kind. All of this is designed for doing that. You see these specialty fields. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just mention a couple that are kind of cool. If you want someone to be able to return to your form, choosing Save and Return allows them the option of doing so. If you want in your contact form to make someone prove they're not one of these spider robots going around, you'll put this in. If you want to hide information on the form, but then pass it along in the form, you'll use that. And if you want a date picker, you'll use this. So I see that there's a question about, is there a cost? And the answer is yes, they have a free version, and they also have a subscription version. Pretty much all of the companies, including Google Forms, have a free version and a paid version. And bottom line is that you get more information, you get more features with the paid version. Usually it's a greater number of items, greater number of forms, or greater number of features. Having said that, the cost for many of these is pretty nominal. So notice here even more, they have something called matrices. I'm not going to go into what that is right now, other than to say that if you have a series of questions, you're going to probably want to use either the drop-down or the radio button matrix. And I'll show you in just a moment what that looks like. I'm going to do a little demo. So analyzing data, remember I said we were going to touch base on that? So here is a Google spreadsheet that I did not create. This was created automatically when I created my Google form. So remember we had our nice Google form that asked, are you interested in assessment or groups or individual? Well, it created a whole long range of names, one for every single field, plus it added one right here called timestamp. And that's really useful. Here, I've gone ahead and populated the form. I just filled out the survey one time. Remember, surveys collect information and they are interface tools. So here, by putting in the information, notice I did this yesterday, what, at 9:30 at night or 9 o'clock? Yeah, I never do anything at the last minute. I can choose who do I want. So there's actually 3 of them in here, and I chose only show me this one. So let's see. I don't really want to go to the Google form right now because I think this gives you an idea, but here's what you can see. See here how there's a little drop down? And see here how this is in green? It's in green because this is the filter that I chose to use. If I wanted to have everything appear, it's a little counterintuitive. I don't clear the filter, I choose select all. If I clear the filter, that means nothing is checked, and it's actually going to look blank, and you'll wonder where all your data went. And that can be a little confusing at first. Keep in mind that Google has this wonderful advantage that, at least when it comes to spreadsheets and docs, it saves everything you do. That's not true, to my knowledge, for forms. If you change a form in Google Docs, you can't revert to the previous version. But here, if you make a massive mistake, you'll come up here under File, you'll go to Versions or Revisions or something, and you'll see older versions of it. Also, under here, under Tools, it has a Notify field. So imagine this. Someone fills out the form, and you want to be notified every time they fill it out. But you don't want that person's name sent to you. Well, Google's just going to send you a notification that something in your form changed. And you can either have the notification occur in real time, and so it happens a few seconds after they complete it, or you can get a daily digest one time per day of all the changes. So that's pretty cool. And there's a lot of other things you can play with. So here, I mentioned that I did a statewide survey of 1,000 psychologists. And notice I'm not using the Google link, that goo.gly. I'm using Bitly, B-I-T-L-Y. Why am I using Bitly? For this reason. If I go here to BMG Psych Survey, you can see, and if we have time, I'm going to show you this in a moment, but I can just type that in and show you the website, or you can go there on your own, and you'll see that all the data on there was completely created in Google. I use Google Sites and Google Sheets for everything. So these are the basic steps to survey design. First and foremost, forget that it's a survey. Forget about paper, because the way we fill things out on paper is from top to bottom. That doesn't have to be the order in which we fill things out on a survey. The pages that pass information forward, if you ask if somebody is a child over 18 or under 18, that may link to 2 entirely different pages of information, all within the same survey. It can even branch to different surveys depending upon which software you're using. So you're going to just write down, what information do you want to collect? What do you want to know? And now you're going to organize it thinking about what is friendliest. So sometimes I don't ask people their email address until later in the survey, because it feels a little bit too off-putting to ask it right away. I'm asking for personal information. So they might be willing to give me their name, and they might be willing to give me other information, and then later in the survey, because keep in mind, we have emotions when we fill these things out. If we don't like something and we don't trust it, we're likely to click away from it. So when you think about survey design, making your surveys inviting, letting people know what you do with your data, all of those things are really important. So you're going to organize it and create your user interface. You're absolutely going to test it so you don't make mistakes like I did with my Thursday versus Wednesday. I made a far more egregious mistake in my survey of 1,000 psychologists, and this is one of the reasons I like FormSite. I was able to go into the survey while it was running live, and I simply stopped it for 5 minutes. The people who were in there would not have been affected. They can continue completing it. I added asking them for their license number, which I had forgotten to do. And then I set the survey up again. With many of the other ones, that would not have been possible. That's not to say FormSite is better. I just happen to like the user interface, and FormSite and Google Forms are the two that are my two go-tos. But we used Qualtrics recently. I didn't put it on there because it's a little bit more expensive and sophisticated, but it's a wonderful program. So it's just a matter of trying any of these out. But what I wound up having to do then was I searched for which psychologists did not have a license number in there, and I used the mass email component of FormSite to reach all of them, and in a separate survey, I asked them to go in and put in their license number. I could have asked them to return to FormSite, but then I would have lost the date and time that they actually filled out the information because it would have updated it, and that's why I chose not to do that. You'll publish it either for a select group, or you'll just put it up as a web link or embed it. And of course, there's the analyzing. So in order to play or practice with these, remember there are free trials available. And I'm going to show you very quickly in FormSite what that looks like. I have that set up. So let's see if it will.
Go to the Google Chrome.
Go to
Google Chrome is in there somewhere.
Right. Okay. See
yeah,
here.
one of those, and then click. Let me see. Which one? Go to that one.
I'll go here.
And
Okay.
then go to
Oh, there we go. So here's FormSite. So it's formsite.com, and you can see here's something called Live Demo. When you click on Live Demo, you get this. It shows you a form, and you can go ahead and play around with it. And actually, let me click on it just to let you see the opening message. It's logging you in. You haven't signed up for anything, and it's going to give you 10 forms. So it looks to me like this is free. You can look on their pricing and results and information.
It's not showing it. Give me 1 second. So go back to the other screen. Sorry.
That's okay.
So you want to do desktop.
Okay. Here, let me let you take over for just a second.
So let's go here.
Remember how I said technology scares me? This is why.
No, that's fine. And so now they're about to see it. They don't see it yet.
Oh, excellent. So bear with me just for a moment, and it should be coming up on your screen. And we're only going to give this about another 10 seconds because I want to answer any questions. I have this rule that I hate to do live demos, and I always put things in a static slide form. Now you know why. So
try the other slide, maybe. I don't know.
Let's see if this does it. So what you will wind up doing is you will go to Google. You'll go to FormSite. You'll click Live Demo. You'll be able to play around. I'm sorry that that's not working at the moment. So we're going to go back to
go to the Google Chrome.
Right here?
Then go back to here.
Okay. So let's see.
Here. Let's see. And then go back to presentation then.
Okay.
Did it work? The first one?
First one?
Go to like slide 60 or.
Okay. Okay.
So like 60.
So we were right here. And I'm sorry that I can't show you this demo right now. I'm glad that I left it for the very end. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you. And I see that there are a few questions. One question isn't a question. You're not seeing it. Yeah, no one saw it. Are there any other questions that anybody might have? You'll be able to play around with this. And if it's something that you are really interested in, contact ShrinkSync, and I would be willing to create an online demo that people can have access to. So I'm sorry that the technology didn't work for that. My fear of other people's technology has once again been reaffirmed.
Oh no.
But that's.
Abby's writing something.
I will tell you something that was really nice to watch on here, because I could see another computer with a monitor. synchronization or refresh time between me seeing things and you seeing things was almost instantaneous. And when I use a product GoToWebinar, I don't see that. I see that there's a lag, and I always have to put things up. So that was the good. You got to see it. So here's a question. I'm interested in using forms for intake and assessment. Are there particular items clients are unwilling to share online, even if clearly secured? Well, you know what's interesting? Where this whole stuff on surveys began was with sexual information surveys. People would interview with someone face to face, and they would not give valid information, or they would withhold. And someone got the idea, well, let's ask the information in a survey, and all of a sudden they were getting data that was more accurate and information that was more revealing. So actually, I have the opposite problem. I'm sometimes surprised by how much information people share initially. Now, of course, your policies and procedures, and you can limit in Google, not Google, but in FormSite and others, you can limit how many words or characters someone has to be able to respond. And I often will limit them to 50 or 100 words because I don't want them going on and on. So that's, I mean, it's a great question. I have not experienced that there's information people are unwilling to share, but asking them and giving them the choice. For example, we have a customized tool called Progress Communicator for kids with anxiety and anger issues. And I had written a little bit about it in a book chapter a few years back on oppositional defiant disorder. We asked the kids, you're so brave for having come on and logging into Progress Communicator, and actually greets them with a friendly message based on time of day. Would you like to report a problem? And it just says yes or no. If it says yes, it congratulates them and tells them how brave they're being. And if it says no, it gives them, like, I think it's a sad face of a basset hound or something, and it says it can be really hard to share your feelings, and there's maybe 20 other randomized messages that can show up. And it congratulates them just for clicking no, and then it carries them through. But you know what? I have probably, in the 15 years that I've had that program that runs in schools and places, I've probably had maybe 5 kids click no. The majority of the time, they click yes, the vast majority of the time. So my point about that is that really this business of asking people and giving them choices on what information to share is really most helpful. I'm seeing, let's see, another question here.
That's really reassuring.
Yeah, that's reassuring, thanks. And someone liked what I did. So good, I didn't overwhelm you today. I'm glad about that. If you have questions, I didn't show you my own contact forms, but if you just type in my name, Bruce Gale, you'll get to one of my websites. And if you click on contact forms, you can even test it out. You're not going to hurt my feelings or anything, and you can say, you know, hi or something. So notice that you're not going to easily find my email address. I don't mind giving it to you. One of my main websites is bgalephd.com. My first name is Bruce. So if you were to go to bruce@bgalephd.com, that's my email. But you're not going to see it anywhere on my website because it cuts down on spam. If your email is out there, the little web spiders find it, they store it, and that's how you get these things. They even have little bots that can fill out your forms automatically. It's something called scraping, and they're able to automatically fill out forms like they're a person. And the way around that is that thing called, I think it's called CAPTCHA or CAPTCHA. It's that little code that you have to type in or a question you have to answer that fools the robots for now. So I think we're right at time to go ahead and conclude. I want to thank everyone for participating and attending. And if you have questions, feel free to find me, and I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
And I think someone's writing something.
Oh, we have one last something?
Probably going to make a comment.
What was that thing? I saw a comment
you,
about
really
awkward goodbye. Oh, good. You're welcome. I'm glad that this was useful. Bye, everybody.
Maybe I just
End session.
go for it.